Hey everybody, Bandicoot Commando here, and welcome back to Bioshock Infinite. Last time we finished it. We finished the DLC. We finished Burial at Sea Part 2. It came to an end, and well, I mean it's over. It all it's all over is all I can say. There's really nothing more I can go on what happened. You'll just have to see for yourself. So today, um, this will be the finale. As we all know, usually in a finale episode, depending on the game, I always try to go over the development history in the games, and or if there isn't much development history to go by, I at least try to go over some interesting content that is either in the game or was meant to be in the game but got removed, and so on and so forth. Just a second. Alright, I hope that did the trick. Okay, let's dive in, shall we? Now, I have the Bioshock wiki here, and they have a page that's dedicated to a lot of the stuff that was removed from the game, and it also talks about the development as well. So, as I mentioned in the last video, Infinite entered development in early 2008, and while they didn't know for sure how long this game would take to make, the team was split into two. One team would focus on Infinite, while the other team would make a game that would become Bioshock 2. So, for starters, when they were developing the city in the sky, Columbia, they weren't exactly sure where they wanted to set the new city at. They didn't want it to be Rapture, but they wanted it to be connected, though, where there are similarities to it, but it's not an exact copy. There was an idea to potentially use the Renaissance period as a setting, but around that time, Assassin's Creed 2 was announced, and they did not want to copy that. And so they came to the choice of just making a new city, and it would be set in the sky. In the art of Rapture, the art of Bioshock Infinite, was that there were a lot of stuff that, you know, goes unused, and locations and such. And I'll be sure to show these images as well. But as you can see, a lot of the architecture here in these early art pieces had like a nouveau kind of feel, and there were lots of other little oddities to them. It's still very intriguing to see how these looked. It had, like I said, the art nouveau feel. And at the same time, as we get to these, we go from... Whoa, did not mean to click on that. We go from looking from nouveau to slowly hitting the steampunk. Of course, fittingly, around that time period, that's when steampunk was becoming the thing. All in all, we could just see how it was just meant to be, like I said, nouveau until it became more and more steampunk style. Yes. Originally, the classic city being held by balloons instead of quantum field generators or whatever. It just goes on and on. To sum it up greatly... Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Yeah, I don't want to sum that up greatly yet. It wasn't just the buildings in the city that had that Nouveau style. Even the citizens had a similar art style to them. So, once they finally got the idea of the city in the sky, they had to figure out how to move things around. In this image, we see the early ideas and considerations for the skylines. Of course, this was just basically a demonstration and testing on how to use the skyline mechanic until they were able to refine it further down the line. Now comes the part on which what to do with the theme with it. Columbia went through a lot of changes during the development. Like, they were trying to figure out what the theme of the city is, because Rapture's theme was all about, basically just, just free enterprise and stuff like that. And the common theme was the American exceptionism and issues on class and race in the early 20th century. One of the earliest ideas, really, for the story would have been about how, because it was around that time period, it would have been about Luddites, people who shun and have rejected technology against those that were willing to embrace and welcome the technological advancements. And as we could see here in some of these pieces, they are just simply embracing the more American patriotism sort of, or Columbia, I should say, because it's Columbia. Let's see. An idea here is that you wouldn't just be fighting the Vox or the Founders. Citizens also were considered an idea for enemies as well. But in the end, though, citizens don't really play a part in that. And anytime you do run into any civilians, they don't do anything. They just run and hide. Going by all that, let's see. Ah, yes, this guy, this man. One version of the game tried to incorporate an early version of communism, essentially. And I remember seeing the video, too, back then when it was still being made. There's a cut character, Henry Satinstall. He is a politician in Colombia, and he was a member of the Founders' political faction. If you look at the trailer that he appears in, really, the idea for him is that where is it? Yeah, he's going on about, his little speech and just going on about the importance of preserving the purity of Colombia and such, but the guy is clearly insane because he's speaking to empty chairs. There's no crowd, there's no nothing. And it's just, as soon as Booker gets a weapon, that's when he immediately shifts and just sees it as a threat and all of that. So, yeah, you could see he was even in like an early demo. I said video, but it's because I remember it as there was a trailer that had him. But yeah, he was in an early gameplay as well. Now, even though Sultanstall was removed from the final game, he's actually still mentioned, though, with behind the scenes. Like, he is mentioned by citizens in Colombia, and he's also on the $5 bill as well. And more importantly, when in the Founders, with the Vox Populi, with the people that they've scalped, you can see his name and one of his scalps. It's in the middle and alongside close to Fink. So therefore, he was still in the game, but they removed him in the end. Probably because there was so much going on at the time that there was just so much going on. There's also the fact that in the end, though, yeah, the communism aspect was removed. Probably because it was just because it just wasn't needed, really. Let's see. What else have we removed or changed? How about we skip story and setting and we jump to maybe enemies? If I can find it, like, let me scroll back up. Maybe, yeah, here we go. This is what I need. I need this to find the stuff here. Let's see. Okay, levels, businesses, multiplayer. I guess they did consider multiplayer. Characters. Yeah, enemies, here we are. There's quite a number of them. We'll start with the Boys of Silence. While they appear in the final game, and they're only shown in Comstock House and act as a surveillance system, the Boys of Silence originally had a different role to them. The idea of how they worked was that originally, you would have to either fight or run from them, and they were supposed to freely roam an area, and they would be attracted to any sound that you would make. So any sounds you make, they would head over to them, and just basically, yeah, hold on, it should be, yeah, the idea is that as you fight them, they're actually collecting sounds from you, and once they build up enough sound, then they would attack you. But problem with this was that because it was too problematic because of how you would have to, because of the technical standpoint, that you would have to remove ambient sounds from the environment too. And let's see. Let's see. They also, yeah, the other thing was that they were also meant to have the ability to call in reinforcements. In the end, though, they were just nothing but turned into security and turned into nothing but mobile security cameras that could then just summon, yeah, they can summon, what are they called? The lunatics, yeah, that's... I don't know what to call them. They're just inmates that don't seem well, and then they can summon the lunatics. What's also interesting for the Boys of Silence is that, unlike other enemies that wear, like, mask or whatever, they don't have a face whatsoever. Like, you can... Like, it's just... Their model has no facial rigging. No mouth, no eyes, and even enemies that have helmets have facial rigging. You just have to remove the helmet, but... to see their face. But these guys, no faces whatsoever. Moving on from the Boys of Silence, we have an early idea of an enemy that would most likely evolve into the Handyman, the Claw Daddy. It's just basically a handyman of sorts, but it uses giant crab-like claws. That's just how it is. Although, to be fair, I would probably say that the Handyman is scarier looking than this. I mentioned Colombian citizens being regular fighters, but they're no different from splicers. Another enemy that was cut and even has, I think it's a mod. Oh no, that's art. Okay, I thought it was a model. Was simply known as Electro Gloves. They are simply these men that are wearing a strange little device that connects pretty much a majority of their body. But they're wearing these gauntlets as well that allow them to shoot electricity out of them. It would have been similar to a shock jockey, at least. No reason why they removed, but too many enemies, I guess. Another enemy is known as the Enhancer, or Snake Oil. These guys are carrying, I'm assuming they're vigors, but apparently they're potions, though. They would attack you by hurling balls of energy while they would throw the potions at them. Oh, so that's how it is. So yeah, that's just all they were. They just basically these men that would shoot energy at you, and they would throw these bottles of potions to heal their teammates, and probably they would drink the bottles to shoot at you. They actually got far enough that they actually had a 3D model before they got cut. So they got pretty close to making it in the game. Let's see. Okay, yeah, these guys. These are just simply known as freaks. According to their description, the freaks were people who were infected or mutated in some way that they ended up developing some compulsion to eat corpses. Once they eat a dead body, the freak would become monstrous. Why or how this happened, nobody knows. It was most likely just removed for the fact it looked too similar to splicers, if anything. The Handyman! We know how the Handymen are. Let's see. Trying to see. Oh, so there was one unused variant of the Handyman right here. It is basically, instead of the standard machine, the Handyman guy has a clock theme to him instead. Yeah, he has a mechanism in place of the heart. So apparently this Handyman guy had become more cybernetic, if anything. Well, cybernetic in the sense of more machine. Another idea for enemies was these toy-like automatons here. At least in this image. There was an enemy they made called the Mad Toy Maker. And that was just what he is. Just a guy who could create these scary looking automatonic toy things. One of these in particular, one of these toys in particular was actually the earliest design and concept for what would be Songbird. But we'll save Songbird for later on that. And yes, the model did get far enough to be a 3D model, meaning they had heavy consideration for this. Another removed enemy idea was the Magician. Oh my god, stop, don't, why are you, you stupid, I hate this thing. Let me go over my stuff in peace. The magicians were just basically people who had telekinesis and could manipulate the environment. They can also create minions to use. It's much like Rapture. There were ideas to use Little Sisters. This was during the time where originally they were going with the whole Rapture in the Sky thing, but they didn't want to do that. You can see with these two concept pieces of the early Little Sisters that had a more dark European Nouveau style. Here we have another enemy called the Resurrector. This was before the Siren was brought in. He apparently had the ability to use, he would be able to resurrect dead to fight for him. This means you would have had to kill him first before finishing off the enemies, otherwise he would just keep bringing them to life. Before the Boys of Silence, there was an idea to develop security cameras, both stationary and mobile. As weird as it sounds, you have this thing, which is just basically an idea for what a 1900s security camera automaton would look like. Oh boy. Now here we are. This is the one. The Vigor Junkies. The Vigor Junkies are just basically Columbia's version of, but like I said, they eventually reached the point where they did not want to recycle that idea. They just wanted to make their own things. They didn't want to have Rapture in the Sky. Despite this, though, Vigor Junkies still did appear in the final game in a way. And that would be Cornelius Slate. Slate ends up using Shock Jockey against you, and in a way, it was meant to essentially be like a vigor junkie, which, interestingly enough, speaking of Slate, Slate was actually meant to have been a proper boss battle of sorts. And that, well, the idea is that you would supposed to fight him proper. He would have had high speed, had more health, and he was essentially a proper boss. He would have also been immune to possession and bucking bronco. Well, not so much as bucking bronco. It wouldn't. The effects on that would last much shorter. That said, though, let me see. Yeah, if you use console commands, you can actually trigger. You can actually trigger Slate to fight you proper. Oh my god, will this thing stop freezing on me? Otherwise, I'm gonna want to give up early on talking about this if it keeps freezing on me. Yeah, so basically, if you can trigger Slate's original programming, you can fight him like a boss and a normal enemy. Though, if you do kill him, really, he won't drop anything, and I think you'll also crash the game, too. What's interesting is that this model of the Vigor Junkie that was somewhat used for Slate, referred to as Salt of the Earth, this model would later get repurposed, and there it goes. There it goes. It froze on me. I can't go back. I'm trying to go back, and it won't let me go back. Isn't that lovely? I'll just have to finish saying what I was saying. This Vigor Junkie, like I said, referred to as Salt Earth. Although it was unfinished, it was used, actually. It would be altered and used in the Burial at Sea DLC for Frosty Splicers. I talked about enemies and characters. Or should I just say enemies, really? Why not we talk a bit about some characters? Let's start with, I'm going to say Booker, but why don't we start with Elizabeth, actually? Elizabeth went through a few different designs before we hit her final form. This was the earliest. Yeah. Oh, wait. She's 19? I thought she was 17. Well, she was originally supposed to be 17, it says. So, this was the earliest model of Elizabeth. Yeah, nobody really liked this model of Elizabeth, also known as the Gibson Girl, which is based on the illustrations of women during that era of the game. What's interesting is that, oh, actually, I should say later. Later, Elizabeth would look something like this. And what's interesting is that Elizabeth had a different role in the game. The idea was that her powers were more like magic, if anything. And it was part of a mechanic in the game in which whenever Elizabeth would use her powers, she would actually be damaged by it. Since I have this opened up, I might as well use it. Which, speaking of choices, that's the thing. Oh, great. I don't have time for this. Okay, there we go. Now let's try. God, what a bad day to record, I guess. Elizabeth had this mechanic where... Yeah. Okay, there we go. Yes. The use of Elizabeth's powers would harm her, and you would have to take that in account because it would affect how the story would play out. And it was actually similar to an old mechanic that would have been used in the original Bioshock, in which the more plasmids you'd have Jack use, the more and more mutated he would become and just end up becoming a splicer. Let's see. Comstock went through a slight change. Why? Why, though, is because of how, according to Kevin Levine, one developer who was working on the game was very devoutly religious, and he was offended by how Comstock was portrayed. So, because of this, Levine tried to work the concept of forgiveness into Comstock because it would have made for a better story, really, and it explains the part of Comstock's character of wanting to have forgiveness and such, even though he is still doing terrible, terrible things. Let's see. I'm now starting to hate how my internet is turning up. Why don't we go over Vigors? Yeah, Vigors. Oh, actually, before I can go over Vigors, got these early versions of Comstock here. What's interesting is that with this particular early poster of Comstock, this early poster of him would be used in PlayStation All-Stars. That was because at the time, the game Infinite was still in well, I mean, it was pretty much finishing development by then when All-Stars came out. But yeah, they used this one instead of updating it into what the current one is, using one of his older appearances instead. Now let's, oh, you know, I did say we talk of Songbird, actually. Let's see if I can find, let's... Songbird. Well, the only thing is that in the early gameplay trailers and such with Songbird is that he had Big Daddy sound effects. These were probably just meant for placeholders until they can get his actual sounds put in. Let's see. Yeah, this is... Alright, yeah, I read enough of that. Where's the early concept stuff of Songbird at on here? Okay, yeah. Almost there. Well, I mean, yeah, there's concept art of regular Songbird. Prototype model. Oh, that's when it was being built in the burial at sea. Yeah, here it is. Here's the earliest concept of what would have been Songbird, based on the old Mothman. Until they finally came to the idea of just gargoyle-looking creature. What's interesting is that even though Songbird is meant to be huge, there's this idea that Songbird was apparently much smaller. It's still hard to determine if Songbird is a machine or a man. They claim, in the game, they claim that it was a person, but I don't know, I'm starting to see it more as a mechanical creature, if anything. Now let's go over the vigors. Because there are some removed vigors, too. Oh, stop scrolling on me like this. Let me scroll at my own leisure. Oh, wait. Oh? Oh, okay. Well, I'll read on that later. That's something I never knew. Oh, different. Okay. Where's the vigors at? Don't make me type it in. You're gonna make me type it in. Yes, you're gonna, at this point. You're just gonna make me type it in. Alright. Well, vigors were actually different and had a different work to it. Originally, they were meant to be disposable, and the idea is that they had a set number of charges. Weaker vigors would have less uses, more uses, while more powerful vigors had less uses. This was meant to keep on making up new, just keep up on the fly instead of spamming, really. However, the problem is that, yeah, it just, you have to use the salt system. It's just that you can't recharge at will. Another idea is the passive abilities, which would have acted like the gene tonics, known as nostrums. Some were unstable, and you would end up being picked 3 randomized abilities, but some were stable, but they at least had no surprises but were more expensive. Gears ended up replacing these nostrums, but the idea of the unstable and making you pick between 3 different abilities would be reworked into the infusions. As for the vigors, it's interesting to note that... Okay, here we go. Now I just gotta type it in. Oh, here we are. So, some vigors that were removed. Okay. Yes, where is it? Okay, yes, here it is. Some Vigors had different icons and names, and that some ended up being removed or changed, really. You had Electric Touch, which would eventually, I believe, would not only become the gear of the same name, but it ended up becoming Frost Jockey. Frostbite, which, while um, Frostbite would later be revamped for Old Man Winter. And interestingly, with Old Man Winter, yeah, the Old Man Winter was actually, while the icon was of an unused vigor, it didn't have a name other than the Frostbite. When a fan on the two game forums sent his fan made poster of the vigor and the name, I believe, or at least, yeah, here it is. This poster, this art was the original concept that the fan of the game made and sent to the 2K forums and be like, hey, this would have been great if you had a proper freeze plasmid or vigor in the game. And they liked it so much that they not only that they reworked it, and they even used the icon as the bottle's image, really. And they even used the name. As for the other vigors and such, we have... Oh, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. We had Fungal Healing, Ghost Touch, Kinetic Overflow, which none of those made it into the game. Mesmerize, which ended up being renamed Possession. Murder of Crows and Return to Sender. Rift Tethers, which, despite its name, it's possible Rift Tethers was renamed into Undertow. And then Spider Trap. There was even Telekinesis, which would have presumably acted similar to the Plasmid. And then another one called Weapons Slave, which in the end, Weapons Slave ended up being split into two different gears, the Ghost Posse and the Spectral Sidekick. Vigors were also meant to have upgrades to the... Well, I mean, yes, they are upgradable, but they were meant to have proper icons to the upgrades, as you can see here. Anything else on Vigor? Oh, Ironsides. I believe there's something interesting about Ironsides. No? I mean, I could keep going and going with this, but I think we're just reaching a point where I'm not really getting anywhere. Like, how long have I been recording that? For 40 minutes. And I feel like I've not really gotten anywhere. This is why when it comes to this stuff, yeah, when it comes to this stuff, I can't do long ones like this very well. You can read all of... Not again! Stop! Stupid thing! You can read all of these yourself on the Bioshock Infinite Wiki. I keep saying Infinite Wiki. Actually, there was one thing I wanted to read on it. Apparently, was meant to be a proper multiplayer mode. Yeah, here we go. We're back here. Now let's go down to, let's try to go down to it. Alright. Should be here. Oh, actually, there's this canceled DLC, actually. There was the first DLC for the game. Yeah, the first DLC was not meant to be Clash in the Clouds. It was originally, it was basically a section of Columbia, but in the ocean. I'm assuming the idea for it was that, yeah, it was that Columbia would float down near the ocean or something. But in the end, it went up going unused. Yes, here's another one that was interesting. There was meant to have been a novel for Bioshock Infinite. They've already made a novel for Bioshock, I believe. I believe they call it, what was its name again? I think it was just simply called Before Rapture. Yes, Bioshock Rapture. Apparently there was another... Yes. Oh, it's a prequel story. There was another novel, Mind and Revolt. And it's meant to be like a prequel to the, to Infinite. Or at least that sets things up. It just simply shows an insight and background on some of the characters of Columbia and such. And this is before, again, this is before the events of the game start. Going back to this, let's see. I can't find it, and it's getting more and more difficult because of how my laptop wants to act up on me. Let's just say that the team had to cut about 5 to 6 games worth of material from it. The earliest version... Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, that was the original idea, that the earliest version of Clash in the Clouds was that Columbia was crashing into the ocean. But that's before they decided to do that with Burial at Sea. So, I mean, I can only apologize for not doing a better job at this, because if this didn't have so much content in it, I would do a much better job, but I'm just not having the best of luck at these things. But I will say that there's a few things I want to, I'm just gonna stop here, but there's a few things I want to address before I stop. A few things to make note on. Number one, because as of now, there is no Bioshock 4, at least not yet there isn't. Like, this will be a, this will pretty much be the actual first, game franchise that I have completed. I thought I did that with Pac-Man World, but when I finished Pac-Man World 3, but hey, surprise, surprise, roughly a few months after I finished that, they announced Pac-Man World Repack, so I spoke too soon there. But for Bioshock here, yeah, this is pretty much the last game in the franchise. There is a Bioshock 4, but as of now, there is still nothing we don't know about it. So all I can say is that it is being developed by Cloud Chamber, which is basically like the new, yeah, it's the new version of Irrational Games, really. But as of now, even though they announced back in 2019 that yes, a new Bioshock game is in development, it will be years until we see it. So we just don't know how long it's going to take. But if you are interested though, you can check out Kevin Levine's other upcoming game, which that would be, I said Kevin, but it's Ken. Ken Levine, I'm not sure how you say his last name. You can take a look at his new game over at Ghost Story Games. I believe Ghost Story Games won't have anything to do with the new Bioshock game, but you can take a look at their new game coming out, Judas. Judas, though, won't be out until at least at the latest next year of March. But yeah, until Bioshock 4 gets properly made, I'm done with playing the Bioshock games. Another thing I want to address is to explain what my future for the channel will be, or at least the schedule, I should say. So, I've done another 4 games. I'm ready to take another small break because of just recent things and changes are coming and I need to prep for them. I would like to thank you guys for watching and all of that. Like, Infinite was really fun to go through again. Like, I've not played that game in pretty much almost 10 years at this point since I last touched it, so it was quite an experience to play through it again. And I swear to God, I will, like, during this break period, I will find the time to play Bioshock 1 again and just be like, yeah, that's what it was like. And was there anything else I wanted to... I don't think so. So, the only final thing I can say is, this is probably going to break my heart a bit as I say this. I'm dedicating this video to someone who, passed away recently. This person would be an uncle of mine. My uncle, I mean, as I record this, it has been a full month since he passed away, and when I started Bioshock, when I started the Let's Play here, like, let me check again when I uploaded the first video. That was back... Oh, I forgot to do... Well, I'll do that once I get done recording. The first video was way back in... Whoops. Wait, what? Why is it... That doesn't look right. Oh, it was delayed in catching up. Okay. Okay, here it is. The first video went up back in August... Okay, August 7th. So, wow, it's been 2 months. This game took me 2 months to get through. I thought it would take me at least 3 months. August 7th, but then that means I recorded it at the earliest, like a week before. It had to have been at least a week before when I recorded it, but my uncle was pretty much on his last legs of his life. back in August. Like, it was around in, I think, the next week. Yeah, I believe it was either, I think it actually was on the Friday of that week, either the Friday or Saturday of that week, where, or no, it was the Friday or the Saturday of the next week, where um, we were given the news that he was pretty much on his last legs and he wanted us to see him. So we came in, we saw him. He was not really in the best condition, but he was still able to, speak, and he was lucid and such. It um wasn't until oh, stupid thing. Okay. It wasn't until around Wednesday. No, that can't be. Oh, okay. It wasn't until around, I think it was, okay, yeah, it was on the 30th of August is when we went to see him again, and this time he was truly like on the verge. He was on the verge of where he would soon die. We visited him one last time, and he was not in any better condition. Like, he was, according to my aunt, he was still in a state of like, you know, he may be asleep, but he was clearly still able to hear and be aware of his surroundings. And then it wouldn't be until on the, yes, I believe it was a few days later that on the 3rd of September is when he passed away. And what makes it even sadder is that before I left for work that day, I was running a bit behind on my schedule to leave, and I was in the middle of getting my shoes on and everything, and my dad's phone was going off, and I briefly looked over to see who was calling, and it had my aunt's name, and I didn't answer it. I feel bad not doing that, but that was because I knew, just by looking, I knew that she was going to say that, you know, uncle had passed away. And so, and, I had to leave for work and I didn't want to be late and all that. So then when I think it was like a day or two later that I um, brought it up with my dad, and yeah, he confirmed it to me that, yeah, he died, he passed away. And oh man, like, even though it's been a solid month since he's passed, and I I mean, God, even as I'm speaking, I'm starting to slowly tear up, but it's still like, it's only when I bring it up that it hurts, is all. We didn't hold a funeral for him or anything because well, I said he didn't want that. And my aunt was willing to, comply with that. And no funeral. I think he was cremated, or no, maybe he was buried. I'd have to ask again to make sure. But all in all, my uncle was a good man. He was there for my lot throughout my life. The many times I would go over to spend the night with them when I was a kid, like, because I was 4, 5, 6 years old. It was always fun to like visit your relatives and spend the night with them instead of over at your parents, being with your parents. And my uncle, back in those days, in those early days of my life, he was somewhat of a gamer. He had a PS1 and would go into PS2, but then later he just kind of dropped it. Like, I think it was like the mid 2000s where he finally say mid two. It was like more like the late 2000s that he finally like dropped it, and he's like, yeah, it's not made for me. But he had his fair share of games I played on. In fact, he had oh man, the stories I can tell with my childhood of these things. Like he basically had Medieval, the original PS1 Medieval, and that's how I came to learn Medieval was because he had the game. Of course, at the time when I played it, I didn't know how to read well back then, and I had no idea what I was doing, but he had Medieval, he had oh, what other good games did he have? Some of those games he had I currently own and have. Like he had Fighting Force, which, that's the game I have on me. He had a few games from like Eidos and Crystal Dynamics basically. So yeah, Fighting Force, Ninja, Shadow of Darkness, Pandemonium. He had Tomb Raider at one point, but he couldn't really figure out how to do that one. He had quite a number of games, and it was always fun to visit and bring my games along and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, now he's gone. Oh, and he was also the one thing he was responsible for. He was responsible for essentially introducing me to Spider-Man and to the Marvel universe, if anything. Because back then I don't think I really knew the Marvel universe. Like I might have heard the names, but I didn't really know anything about them. I don't even think I saw the Spider-Man 90s series at the time either. So it was the Spider-Man 2000 game on PS1 he had, and I, I'm gonna miss you, Uncle. That's all I'm gonna say. And I feel Bioshock Infinite, and with the roller coaster of emotions it makes for a fitting end to dedicate it to. So, yeah, I'll be gone for a few months to practice for the next 4 games on the channel. I'm still gonna obviously upload multiverses. I may also upload some other side projects while I'm at it, but I'm just gonna focus on not only practicing for the next 4 games, but also doing other stuff as well. So, that is it, and I will see you guys in the next one.